Welcome to another live edition of Open Mic. Along with Kevin Dietz, I'm Mike Morse. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm okay, man. Some crazy days here in Michigan. Scary, sad, upsetting. What's been going on since the George Floyd murder last week. It's just, that was awful. What's happening now is sad. We have a couple of reporters, one from the Detroit News, one from Bridge, Michigan, and they have been watching. One was arrested briefly last night, and so we have lots of questions. And then following that, the chief of police of Detroit, James Craig, is going to be hopping on our Facebook Live feed and answering people's questions. And your questions and my questions. So if anybody out there has any questions for James Craig or these reporters, please send them away and we will do our best to ask. Any thoughts before we bring them on, Kevin?
Yeah, I just the last time I saw something like this was when the verdict came out for Malice Green like 25 years ago. And it just, the images flood back of that intensity between the public and police. And it's just so scary because people are trying to have a voice, and then all of a sudden it goes from day to night, and that voice becomes violent, and it's so scary. And it's, police are in a tough situation, the media's in a tough situation, the public's in a tough situation. But our guests today were right in the middle of it, so I'm excited to hear their stories.
Yeah, me too. Lots of questions. All right, let's bring them on. Why don't you make the introductions, Kevin?
All right, joining us, Christine MacDonald of the Detroit News, who was briefly detained last night, is with us, and Louis Aguilar of Bridge Detroit Magazine is with us too, and he's been covering this story all weekend long, watching the different posts of what's going on and giving it some perspective as to what it means to the city. Some cities, burned down. Detroit was not one of them, and so it'll be interesting to see what they thought of the police tactics in real time. So, if we can bring up Christine and Louis, that'd be great. Hey, guys.
Hi. Thanks.
Hello. Welcome to Open Mic.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thanks for being
interesting
here.
time to be a reporter, right?
Yeah.
So, always. Christine, let's start with you. You've had some excitement in the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell our viewers and listeners what happened to you last night?
Well, I volunteered to work the Sunday shift. We've had reporters, just a number of issues. We've got COVID, we've got the Midland flooding, and now these protests. So we're all been very strapped. And so I volunteered to work Sunday night. And so I was at the protest, and it's at a point, it was a little after 9 o'clock. I was over at Campus Martius, the west side, where the People Mover stop is. And there's a park there. It's a wooded area, a little dark. And I did see a officer running after a teen, somebody that looked like in his teens or early 20s. So I started filming, and on our Facebook Live account at the Detroit News, if your viewers want to view that, it's still on there if they want to see that. And so I was filming his arrest, and I was quite a distance away. And when the officer picked him up, I could feel someone behind me, and I felt cuffs on my wrists immediately. And the officer said, "Who are you with?" And yeah, that's me.
That's a low-tech way of sharing.
Right. I forgot to mention, I did have a gas mask on. You can see that there. There was a lot of tear gas, and at that point, I was trying to protect myself. And I did, as you can see probably in that photo too, is I did have my ID on a lanyard around my neck. And so I told
you show that picture again. You can see that ID right around her neck is clearly identifies her as a reporter there.
I already left it.
Okay, it's just a small white card around my neck. And so he asked if I had an ID or something to that effect. And I did say yes, I did have identification. And he said he wanted to take me over to his car, which was over on Woodward. And so we went there, and that's That's that picture, me standing by the car, handcuffed, waiting. And then he took some, asked me some personal questions, took some notes. But at the same time, there just happened to be a group of other reporters, about 5 or 7 reporters nearby. And they didn't recognize me because I did have the mask on, but eventually understood who I was and, vouched for me to him as well. And
Christine, let me jump in here for a second. I'm going to break down the story because I just have a couple questions. From everything that we've seen on the news, I mean, this is mass chaos, and there's people running, and there's tear gas, and there's rubber bullets, and there's press, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people protesting. Now, this is after curfew, and yet they're stopping to accost you and put you into handcuffs. What's the scene like? What's that?
Yeah, no, the scene, you're right. It was quite a bit of time since the bigger crowds were broken up, and that was at deep in the lawn on DPD's lawn. DPD has this huge kind of expansive lawn, and that's where all the hundreds of protesters ended up walking to, and they listened to speeches, and then the curfew ended, and then maybe a half hour after that is when the police moved on those folks. Now, they were peaceful that whole time, but we were being told to move and to go home by police, and did not comply. And so then at that point, the cops started firing the tear gas, and that's what broke up that whole crew, hundreds of folks, and then down Michigan. So you had some people that went down towards Corktown, and the other group, the larger group, went down towards downtown, and that's kind of where I was going. And we ended up the group was just fractured off, and so there were a few people where I would eventually be over at Grand Circus Park, and so you could see folks running from police. You could see cop cars around, and so I was starting to film, like that arrest that I mentioned. And so
do you think it was the filming? I'm confused.
Yeah.
Do you think it was the filming of the arrest that made them come to you because, for whatever reason, as opposed to using the police force and their police energy to really get the people who needed to be arrested, who were really violating curfew?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, we'd have to ask the officer, obviously, but I'm standing there. It's I believe it was on the path. I remember because in that park, there's a chain link, to right where the grass starts. So I'm on the other side of the chain link, just a single chain that separates the grass. And then the officer that was arresting the person was quite a distance away on the grass. And so I wasn't interfering at all. I wasn't even near them, frankly. And you can see in the video, it was pretty far away. So it was even hard to see in the video. And there was another person filming with me. I don't know who he was, but he was nearby me. And he was not arrested. I was. I had the gas mask on. He didn't. That could have been an element. But it was right away. I was handcuffed. Previously in the night, when the police first moved and started firing the canisters at DPD's front lawn, I was filming, and I encountered 2 cops who said, "Are you with the media?" And I said yes, and they could see my badge, and they they did not try to stop me at all. So I did have 2 instances where police did do what's supposed to happen and not interfere with my job. And but later in the night, maybe it was because of the darkness too. I don't know, but I was immediately handcuffed. There was no discussion, no questioning, and there were other people. There was at least one other person nearby doing the same thing that I was doing. So
Christine, we were seeing a lot of stuff on the internet and Facebook and YouTube, and the Detroit police were being very aggressive. They were pushing people over. We saw a reporter get a phone slapped out of their hands. We saw protesters get thrown to the ground. We saw tear gas. We saw a lot going on. Do you get a sense that they were trying to stop people from Facebook Live, or do you feel like maybe they thought you were one of the agitators because you had a gas mask on and you were filming it, and they were going to put a stop to you as an agitator?
Yeah, it's just hard to say. I mean, without talking, I was so engrossed with what I was doing. I don't totally know what was going on around me, so I'm not sure, I don't know that, people were targeted. I don't know that as journalists, I don't think that was happening, but I don't know. When canisters are thrown into the crowd, I mean, obviously police don't know at distance, who, if there's a reporter there, but I don't know, I'm sorry. It's tough. I can only tell you my experience, but I had 3 interactions, 2 of them where the cops asked me who I was. And as soon as I said I was a reporter, they let me go or let me on with what I was doing. And the third did not end that way. So,
so you had, just to be clear, you had handcuffs on. They didn't take you to the station. They didn't formally arrest you.
Not at all.
They detained you.
Yeah, I asked me a bunch of personal questions, my address and et cetera. And, but at the same time, those other reporters were yelling, hey, she is with the press, she is with the Detroit News, et cetera. So I'm not sure what would have happened without, them there. Who knows? But if I would have.
I feel like from you and Lewis, you could chime in from what you've been, watching with your sources. And I hope this is not the case, but does either one of you, do either of your news departments feel like media was being intentionally targeted?
Lewis, I'm curious what you think.
From an outside perspective, I don't think so. I just think things are very tense as the hours go by, as there's day after day of protest. I think just emotions are getting raw. I just think you see so many images of the police being taunted. That really is, of course, I'm not trying to justify in any way the way they treated Christine or others. But I guess my initial reaction is that people are very human, and people are very tired, and people are very stressed, and it's pretty chaotic. As I watched so many images throughout the night, I was there Friday at the start of the first march, and it was celebratory. I mean, I saw families there. I mean, there was a sense of people, able to vocalize their feelings about police brutality, about many things. I mean, there was, police were handing out masks to people, and I left thinking, wow, this went pretty well. And then, an hour later, I see what's going on in Corktown, and then, throughout Friday night and Saturday night, I mean, the crowds change. It's a much younger crowd. I see so many images of people taunting the police. At the same time, I see so many protesters, a vast majority of the protesters, even late at night, simply trying to keep the peace, even urging other protesters to, calm down, that they don't want violence. So it's such a broad range of emotions out there. And our job at BridgeDetroit really was to try to find as many voices as we can to find out why they're there. Obviously it just speaks to the raw state of urban America. I mean, after a killer virus, huge economic insecurity. And now, this viral image of another black man being killed at the hands of a white policeman. That's enough for a lot of people to express a lot of rage.
It seemed like, as you watch different cities had different strategies. Some were kind of letting the protesters have at it. They burned the 3rd precinct in Minneapolis. In Detroit, it seemed like they had made a decision. They weren't going to let that happen. They weren't going to let the mob get control of any one area. And it was interesting because I was watching at one point, protesters were down by the Nike store. It looked like they were going to try and break in or bust the glass at the Nike store. The police weren't even there yet. Other citizens were there like, hey, get out of here. We don't want you busting up the downtown area. And I'm just curious what you were seeing out there, or what the reporters are reporting back that they were seeing out there. Was this out-of-towners? Was this local, Metro Detroiters? Were people angry, or were people trying to incite violence? What was your sense of it? Because as you watch it on TV, it's really it's so frightening and sad.
I can speak to Sunday. Lewis was there Friday, Saturday. Sunday, there were before it all kicked off, people were just protesting. There was nothing violent. There were a couple of water bottles that initially got thrown towards the cops after, once the curfew had ended and things got tense. But actually the crowd quickly talked everybody off of doing that, and really was aggressive about making sure that wasn't happening. So I really only saw a couple of bottles go in the air. It didn't hit anybody, thankfully. But things were incredibly tense. As everybody knew, as that curfew, approached and went by, everybody knew something was going to happen. You saw the cops put on their gas masks as well. But there was nothing. There was no violence Sunday until that, those canisters started going off, and they dispersed folks. Obviously, they told people because of the curfew, that they had to leave, and that's what happened there. But I mean, seems like Friday and Saturday was a different atmosphere somewhat. Lewis could probably speak to that.
Well, just to clarify once again, I went for maybe 90 minutes on Friday when the official protest ended, and it was fine. And yeah. I'm like, well, okay, that's it. That's not much of a story, really. I'm glad to see, but it changed, obviously. Friday and Saturday, I stayed up literally watching dozens of raw social media posts and Facebook Live feeds, and it's always the same scene at night where it's obviously much younger people, and some people are there just to have fun, just to see what's going on. They're just kind of hanging out. Others are there to taunt, and others are there just to shout. It's just it's hard to categorize one group over another, other than really there's always skirmishes, but the skirmishes never last very long. Saturday, I guess early Sunday, the Saturday night, early Sunday, there was a 20-minute sort of standoff between the police in front of the DPD headquarters, a row of police and a row of protesters. And it lasted for 20 minutes where they're just sort of looking at each other. There's some taunting, but really they're just kind of milling about. And then somebody finally throws something on the cops, and the cops get very aggressive. It's tear gas instead of pepper gas, as opposed to Friday. Friday it was pepper gas. Saturday it was tear gas. And the Texans got a bit more aggressive.
Do you think the mayor should have put a curfew on as early as Friday night or Saturday night? Waited till Sunday night at 8:00 before a curfew. We saw what was going on around other places in the country. Any thoughts on? You were there Sunday, Christine? Did the curfew help eliminate bigger problems, and might that have helped on a Saturday night or even Friday night?
I can't say. It's hard to say. I think they cleared those folks out really quickly. It sounds like they knew they were going to handle it differently Sunday with that curfew, and by what was it? I think about 8:30 is when those canisters started flying. So, and shortly after that, those crowds were done. There was very few folks out, and just handfuls, downtown and in small groups, and definitely not what I saw online. We saw Friday and Saturday. So things were much different with that curfew.
Yeah, curfews have mixed results in other cities. There are cities that have much more violence than they've had curfews, and curfew was one of the reasons people sustained their anger. So we're interested to see how it's going to have an effect here if it continues.
Has the mayor announced that they're going to have a curfew tonight, I assume, but I haven't seen anything.
I haven't seen anything official either.
Oh, okay. Maybe they're doing, I know the chief of police is on probably right now, and maybe there's a curfew or not. It does sound from the way Christine announces or describes the scene that most people, a high percentage of people, respected the curfew, and then there were the smaller percentage of people who were there to make trouble.
I think there were people who just waited and to see what was going to happen. The bulk of the protesters stayed, from my assessment, until, yeah, I thought so. There were tons, on that big DPD lawn, pretty expansive, and folks were waiting to see what would happen. But once those canisters, once that started, that really dissipated everybody.
And we all saw that semicircle with the police officers trying to move the crowd. It was very tense to watch after the fact. Being there, what was the mood? What was how scary was it?
Yeah, it was pretty intense. I mean, there's just the structure of that lawn. There's a big kind of embankment where there's a ton of rocks, like huge boulders, and then the ground goes down. So you had protesters on top of those rocks, and then you had them below, and then in front were the police officers. So you could see that if things got bad and the group on top of the rocks started running, it could have gotten really ugly with the even just the ground there, that how it was, that area is. And so just waiting for it to happen was really intense, and seeing at some point, the huge vehicles, the armored vehicles that they had down the street, and as they were advancing, and then once you saw some of the cops had their masks on, but then it's after the curfew expired, you saw more of them put the masks on. So the crowd got more intense then, and just people asking, a lot of back and forth, pleading with the cops to take a knee, and why don't they do this? And there was a lot of taunting too, and just the chants were hard to hear, and of the names of folks that we've lost, and so it just the emotions were just really high.
Did in watching in Seattle and California and Minneapolis, we saw a lot of places burning. Washington D.C. We saw a lot of looting, a lot of destruction of property that people, you just hate. You hate to see it, and but we didn't really see that in Detroit. Or at least what I saw in Detroit was I saw a police force that was going to be very aggressive, very forward, saying we're not going to let anything get out of hand. We're going to put a stop to anything before it can get too big or out of control. Did you sense that? Do you think it worked, even though it's a very aggressive stance? I mean, did you get a feel for that being there?
I mean, they arrested people very quickly. Once those canisters went, and they were positioned, in a way that it really separated that crowd down Michigan two different ways. And it seemed that their strategy worked. The question is, did it need to get to that point? Because folks were peaceful, into that point. But again, they had instituted a curfew at that, and that's what pushed it to the edge to when people did not leave. So it's a fascinating debate on whether were they too aggressive on these folks who were just sitting there and essentially protesting, and they were not challenging folks at that point. The police at that point.
I think we give some credit. Obviously Friday and Saturday night, there were plenty of opportunities for many to, they're in the glittery part of downtown, full of the new developments. They were in Corktown, one other, where there's literally tens of millions of new investment going on. They had ample opportunity to, cause much more destruction, and they chose not to. So that wasn't just a police strategy. That was certainly the actions of many in the crowd who weren't there for that. And I don't know what they would have done if a group of people would have tried or not. I mean, that you're right, that Nike incident was fascinating to see. Others in the crowd stop that from happening as people were trying to throw rocks at the window. So I don't know what that says, but that is fascinating to me of why there's been little destruction. I don't know if there's been any looting. And some are saying because we have a strong Black leadership. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's the case. But
Louis, I don't know if this makes any sense, and I haven't read this but it just dawned on me, that scene was really impressive at the Nike store. And I did read a couple of things where people are talking about that after the riots back in the 60s in Detroit, the 1967 riot, and how many years it took us to recover, and we're not fully recovered from it. Sure. I wonder, and most of the people on this podcast right now and the people down there were barely alive, if alive, during that time, but we've grown up with it. We've heard stories from our parents. I wonder if any small part of certain people are like, we can't go down this road again.
Sure.
Because it takes 20, 30, 40 years to heal it. What do you guys think about that?
Well, you hear that. You hear so often, Detroit doesn't need to go on this road. We're not out here for this. At the same time, there is an element beyond, people in the crowd yelling things about, global capitalism and anti-gentrification. So it's a whole mix of things. People that are bringing people out there, and that element of economic despair is a theme among some of these people who are out there. One of the main organizers I know is a young guy who spends a lot of time about Detroit evictions and getting renters more rights in Detroit. And now he's sort of shifted into this. For him, it's a very natural, to him, I think they're all connected in terms. So, but I don't know the answer, but I started to ask people I'm talking to who are there. And I would love to find those people. There were like 4 or 5 of the young men standing up to a mob of people saying, don't destroy the Nike store. That was completely fascinating.
Yeah, watching the national coverage of it, they'd have like 6 or 7 cities in a box. San Francisco, Detroit, all these different places where protests were going on. And as you looked at Detroit looked pretty good. There's an aggressive police force, but the city was not burning like it was in other places. And I think even though there was large protests, Detroit overall looked pretty well. But on the other hand, in the USA today, they wrote an article about what police were doing to journalists, and they said it's completely unacceptable, listing some reporters who had rubber bullets shot at them, reporters who were tear gassed, reporters who, you were detained briefly. I just wonder, how you feel about the ability to cover the story, if that is too aggressive. To just take everybody down and everybody out to avoid the city from burning.
Well, I think Louis helped me out. Was it Cleveland that had said that no reporters could be out in town during their curfew? It was even more radical, that we experienced here in Detroit. I think it was Cleveland, but I saw online.
It's not a new thing. I was a reporter in Washington, D.C. back in the late 90s, and there were lots of anti-global protests against the World Bank and things like that. And there were journalists getting arrested. There were severe limitations of where we could go. This element of aggression against reporters during these times, capturing these kind of moments, has been going on for a long time. I covered a sports riot in Chicago when I was an intern at the Chicago Tribune when the Bulls won the championship. And I remember we all got sort of me and like 20 other reporters, we just got pinned to a corner, as you know, as there were masses of people just just having a good time and starting to light things on fire. So I mean, it's not a new element that happened during this time. I mean, if there's always push and pull of stuff, and I just think, cops are human. I mean, we are a group of people who are making them look bad, they think, and that's, I don't know. I mean, it's just part of the job, I think.
We had some folks online say, well, you should be wearing, because I just had the small, ID around my neck, and you should be wearing a bigger identifier, press on the back. And I know some people, there was a WDET reporter who had more bigger identification, but we have some national journalism groups that were giving us advice, prior to this. And, the debate is, if you have that bigger identification, you could potentially, there's a slight chance, but you could potentially be targeted by some of the protesters if you have press all the way on your back, if that's some folks that don't want to be photographed, or depending on the situation. So but obviously I needed my ID in my situation. So it's a tough thing. And I know our editor, Gary Miles, is working on that, and he's in contact with DPD on this, and they want to, at least they've expressed to him that they want to make sure this doesn't happen again, and that journalists aren't prevented from doing their jobs.
Do you have any plans, either one of you, to go back out tonight and see what's happening downtown?
Actually, I think I might. I mean, I'm curious to see what, I don't really know. I mean, is there a curfew still? I don't even know. I mean, and what's the event tonight? So we'll see. But I might do it.
I think they were planning to be headed back down to DPD. That's what they said yesterday at the protest at 4 today.
You guys have been covering this town for a long time, and I'm just curious about your thoughts about, from the police perspective. I mean, the police, what a tough job that's been for the last 5 years. I mean, it seems like everyone is coming at them all the time, and with social media, and everyone has a camera phone, these incidents are recorded. But you look at the statistics, and people will tell you that, it's rare. It's very rare that there's a police officer like the one in this case that's doing that. I'm not saying rare completely, but percentage-wise, most police officers are out there trying to do their job, and they're taking insults, and their lives are in danger all the time too. And so when something like this jumps off, and they're out there doing their job, it's hard, because they are just getting beat up left and right by everybody. It's not just the media. I mean, it just, as people in the comment sections are mad at police, and I just wonder if you feel like these protests are helping. Are they doing anything? Are we finally shedding light on this institutional racism that's been such a problem, or are we digging in deeper on our sides? I'm just curious what you think from a societal standpoint. What kind of impact this might be having?
Well, my initial instinct is to get to the people who are protesting now. Like, why are you still out there? I mean, what are you saying about the violent confrontations? I mean, those are the people I really want to hear from right now. That's what I think I can do as a journalist, is to try to get to those voices and see what is still compelling them. Because I think all of us are saying, why are you still out there? But they're out there. I mean, they feel the need to do it, and so they feel the need to have their voice heard. And so that's what I think I could serve as a journalist, to try to get to that voice and at least understand where they're coming from and what they say about the violence themselves. I mean, I can't give a sweeping answer in terms of just from a natural perspective of, I'm just thinking, this is the fourth day in a row for most of those police departments to be out there on that line. I mean, they just got to have, their nerves got to be pretty afraid at this point. And I just think the potential for more aggression is there simply out of fatigue, I would believe.
I talked to one guy, I don't know if this goes to your question, but he was a Detroiter, brought his 3 kids to each of the 3 protests. He's 47. He told me he'd never protested like this before, and that he wanted to be there each night just because he had reached his limit. And he said he had multiple bad interactions with particularly DPD, and it just felt this was the moment that he needed to show up and invest in and communicating that this was enough and that he doesn't trust police is what he had said. So it was quite a commitment. I was surprised to be dragging, three little ones with him for 3 days in a row. But he said he would be there today if he had to. And he's a Detroiter. So, we'll see. I was surprised with this case that so quickly so much. A number of national, chiefs across the nation did come out pretty quickly and even call this murder, including DPD's chief. So that seemed somewhat different from some of the other cases we've seen. But
right, that's a good point, Christine. This crime really was black and white. There was no, there was no gray area here whether or not this was a murder charge, and I think people are stepping up to admit that, and that's rare. I think you're right. That's usually more vague, and it takes months and months and months. And I think that's a good thing that people are calling it what it is. That there was no excuse. This shouldn't have happened. This was one of the worst things I think most people have seen and will ever see. It's one of the worst videos I've ever seen. It's hard to watch. And I think you're right. I think that's an interesting point that they are coming out quickly. Go ahead, Louis.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I worked at the time. I'm afraid I do have to run. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Louis, for being on.
Thank you, Louis. Appreciate you being on.
Sure.
see ya.
Bye-bye.
Christine, I wonder if has anyone mentioned to you that they're out there protesting because they're upset that the other police officers haven't been arrested that were there and witnessed George Floyd's death? Because like Lewis was saying, I want to know why the protesters were out there. I totally understand the protesters being out there until more is done. It seems to my eye that the prosecutors haven't done enough out there, whether you disagree with the 3rd-degree murder charge, think it should be 2nd or 1st degree, or that others should be arrested and charged. I get why people are protesting, not why they're becoming violent, but I get the protest. I just wonder if people are expressing that, or if they were at all Sunday night, or.
Yeah, they didn't. I didn't hear anyone mention the other officers, but that very well could be a motivator. I think just what I heard is just a complete, hitting a limit and seeing this as the moment where they could not be there. You know what I'm saying? And that they felt they had to continue this momentum and felt a commitment to being there and seeing, I think, seeing all the other cities, folks showing up in the other cities was a big motivator for a lot of these folks, and that Detroit had to have that same showing. It seemed like that was kind of the mood too, at least the folks I talked to on Sunday.
What would you say to the chief of police or the mayor of Detroit about, from a journalist perspective, of how best to go forward in this protest and in others, because it seems certain that it's going to come up again? What are some of the things that need to be discussed between the media and City Hall?
Well, I think just for sure communicating with all officers, even the guys, the street beat folks, that, hey, that these reporters are out doing their jobs. I mean, the guy that I interacted with, twice said, hey, there's a curfew out here, inferring that I should not be here. And even after I told them what I was doing, then I was a reporter. So clearly there was a information gap, that he didn't understand that I, as a reporter, was clearly allowed to be on the streets documenting what was going on. And to have him bringing it up twice and tell me, you're going home after this, basically, and me saying, no, I'm not, I'm doing my job just like you are. So here, having DPD set the tone, maybe not just in the command, and communicating that to everybody, that we are there to do our jobs, and we should be, they should stay away, do not impede what we're doing. And we're not trying to impede what they're doing, but we're there to document this. And that's what I was trying to do. I was, filming an arrest, and I should, for him to arrest me, clearly stop me from doing that, and stop me from providing that service to the public, and was wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting. They, we being out there on the streets, there's we were talking about aggressive police. There's aggressive reporters too, and there's reporters that push the boundaries all the time. And if they set up a line one way, they might go around to see if they could get to the back of a building to get a scoop or whatever. But
Right.
I haven't gotten the sense that that's what's going on here. I kind of feel like the police are telling the media to go to one area, and they're trying to do that. But it is interesting, because as you look around the country, you see the same kind of confrontations going on between the police and the media. And I think it is important that the media, follow the police direction and make sure everybody's safe first as you're trying to report what's going on.
Yeah. We need to, but we need to be super aggressive as reporters, to be out there doing our best to document this stuff. And that's what folks are trying to do. We're doing it in an atmosphere where there's fewer of us. There's so few. I mean, I can't even tell you, it's night and day from when I started out in this business, and it's completely sad. And then just here, we're under furloughs right now. A ton of the staff are not even there, that we can't even deploy. Because you can imagine if we were able to put out even more reporters and cover this in a better way. And now we have these three huge once in a lifetime events, the flooding, the COVID, and this huge, reaction in protests and this loss of life. And to not have those the bench of reporters to be able to cover this the way we should is just devastating. And so it's a very tough environment to bring this to people. And I know everybody is all these other industries and careers are experiencing similar things, but we're trying to do this for the public's benefit, and it's just a tough time to be doing this type of work.
That's a really good point, Christine. And I don't think I've thought of that until you just brought it up. What coverage really could look like if you had your full bench, as you put it, if you had your full team working. And I think now more than ever, I think that the cameras downtown, every city, are important. I think it gives us a flavor of what's happening. Imagine if George Floyd, the people who videotaped that, weren't there. What those
that teenage girl,
what the officers would have said happened. And I don't want to come off as biased here, but I wonder if the truth would have come out. Let's just put it that way. I wonder if the truth would have come out had the videotape not been there. And had the videotapes that we're seeing of some of these aggressive officers. What a hard job. I think the protests are needed. It's a hard job to be a protester, and it's a hard job to be a police officer these days, because when the protesters don't listen and they don't follow the laws, they know that they have video cameras on them, and yet some of them are still being aggressive and shoving people to the ground. And it's just, all I can say is I'm happy that there is some video evidence of what's happening, right or wrong, who's at fault, who should be doing what. I think, don't you wish everything could be on tape? All the interactions, how the looting starts and how the whatever it is starts should be on tape. And maybe more will come out. You have surveillance cameras downtown. I know that Dan Gilbert does a good job of having good surveillance down there. I haven't seen any of that come out yet. I wonder if they're looking at that. I wonder if that's going to be offered as well. But it's a good point
Yeah.
you make about the lack of good reporters out there on the streets.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
that's-
go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
But I was just going to say, back in the day, you had two people teams, whether it's newspaper, radio, or TV. You always had a partner. You in a case like we're seeing over this weekend, you would have had a security guard that was brought in to look after you. I mean, now it is one man band. You're out there on your own with a phone. Not to mention this COVID pandemic is still going on. I mean, I'm sure that your workplace gave you certain things that you're supposed to follow to be safe when reporting in the COVID environment. There's no way any of that is going on out there with what we're seeing. Not to mention, if you're out here recording, were you by yourself?
Yeah.
You're out here, you're Facebook living, you're trying to take notes, you're trying to report. You obviously you don't have anyone, no one has your back because a police officer came at you from behind and handcuffed you. That could have been anybody. It's a very, people don't always understand how difficult and dangerous it is to report, especially in intense places like this. I mean, I'm so glad that you guys are out there. I don't know what this world would be like, without it, but I wish there was some more ability for people. We know that reporters are covering stories. We know that incidents like this are going to happen, have happened in the past, are going to happen again in the future. And you just like to see more pre-planning to allow reporters to do their job. Without the stories, we don't know what's going on. And quite frankly, I don't think we're doing enough. And, for folks to be on furlough and then come off furlough and then go out there by themselves in the middle of the dark in a city during a riot, it's fairly outrageous. I mean,
yes. Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, I had planned to work and prepare for, I feel like one of the hugest issues coming out of COVID is going to be the eviction crisis and how many folks are going to start to lose their homes once we start getting back and the courts are opening again. And I'd like to prepare and start, prepping for that and planning, but I've been covering the Midland, I've been helping out with our Midland coverage and then, volunteered to work Sunday because I saw George, I saw the reporters, George Hunter and Christine Ferretti were working to death on this. And, it's a different time. Unfortunately, I mean, the good thing, the silver lining is we have 2 newspapers in this town, and that's a great thing and really valuable for us still. And hopefully we will keep that. But it's you don't know what you've got until it's gone. Cause I fear that, when, maybe we won't make the Detroit News won't make it out of this, hopefully, but we will. But, just think of what the journalism that could have been done, could be done if we had those staffs and it's just to serve the public.
Are you still technically on the City Hall beat?
No, not anymore. I do more investigative stuff longer term. Yeah.
You're covering. You're the City Hall beat reporter. You're in Midland, covering the pandemic and the collapse of the dam. And by the way, pick up a riot on your way over to the.
It's Christine Ferretti. She's got like 12 beats. Slash this, slash that. So.
And now, one of your perks are they're giving you 1970s gas masks to keep you protected. Right out.
We have to share them. I have not been given
them.
Yeah.
Well, are you going to wash them out really well? I mean, before you. Your face mask that night looked like,
I know.
From this, out of the Cold War.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe I scared the officer. Yeah.
Out of a TV show. It did not look real. Did it work?
I know. Yeah, it worked. Yep, it did. It did. It was 6. Yeah. It was just very.
Were you right in the middle of the gas? Did you feel smell the gas?
Yeah. The wind was quite. It picked up, and you would get a face full. And I got, at some point, I put my backpack on and said, I got to get this thing on, and I thinking that I could do without it. I don't know how you do Facebook Live, and I had, I need glasses. I couldn't wear my glasses with my face mask, and then do Facebook Live. And then the funniest part is that, when he arrested me, I still had it going, and I was just in such shock. I couldn't shut it off. Like I think we mentioned earlier. And so it was going the whole time. So you can actually go online and listen to me even after I get released, joke about my editor kind of make fun of him. And I didn't realize the whole thing was all on Facebook Live the whole time. So
I wish somebody was there to hold it and watch you getting arrested. I mean,
I
this is
know.
a
Well,
picture.
yeah, they had 8. Luckily, there were 8 reporters, but Free Press reporters and WDET and some other folks. So that once they knew who I was behind the mask, had spoke up for me.
Did you think there was a period of time where you were going to be going downtown and getting booked?
He did ask me a lot of my address and my phone number and things like that. And I couldn't tell. He said, at the end, okay, I believe you and I'll let you go, and joked that I should have helped him out with the guy that they were trying to arrest. And I was like, no, I'm going to go do my job now.
Helped him out. Were they struggling with the guy?
No, I think they were chasing him and they tackled him pretty good. And that's what I was filming,
Did you get that on film?
Yeah, it's hard to see. It's dark, but that's what I was trying to go for. It was my first time using that Facebook Live, and Kevin will probably laugh.
No disrespect. It's like amateur hour, some of these videos. And listen, you got the gas mask. You've never used it. You're alone. I'm not calling you an amateur. But I'm watching videos from lay people. And for a second, there's a decent shot. And then it's all, jumbled up. I'm like,
that's the
what?
thing. People were yelling at me in the comments, like, this is the worst camera person I've ever seen. Well, yeah, I was arrested. My hands were behind my back and I couldn't.
There's some really bad video. And it's impressive that these big magazines, the USA Today's newspapers, are putting this horrible video. And you show, that's all they have.
Yeah, right.
You
got to use
it. It shows the ground half the time, or the sky half the time.
Yeah,
and it's
I know, but it's pretty amazing. My mom was able to watch my sister on Facebook Live as I got arrested, so that was a family moment.
Oh, nice, very nice.
That's something you guys can talk about at dinner one night. Is that the first time? Have you ever been arrested on the job?
No, never been arrested on the job. Knock on wood. Where so.
Well, I mean, we're glad you didn't. We're glad you didn't go in to get fingerprinted. If Chief Craig does come on, we'll ask him about this. Because obviously, nobody should be targeting the media. I haven't heard evidence they are, but I've never ever, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, Christine, heard this many stories about journalists getting harassed, targeted, handcuffed, bullets, the whole thing. I've never heard that. Usually you guys are pretty darn safe and like off limits, like they don't want to mess with you.
Well, the only other time I've covered something similar, Kevin maybe have more experience on this, but just the MSU riots, back in the day when they ended NCAA stuff. And I remember covering a couple at Cedar Village, but I was never approached by a police officer. And I remember having identification and being with a photographer, but never wasn't this type of, I didn't see anybody have those experiences in that coverage.
There was a time I was in Toledo when some white supremacists were bothering African-American neighborhoods, and the police had to come in and get between everybody. And an officer had pulled a rifle that had rubber bullets in it and was aiming it at me. And I'm like, hey, press. He's like, look, you got to get out of here. We don't know. This is tense. We're doing the best we can. But you can imagine how tense that is. They don't know. I mean, the police don't know if people are carrying weapons. They're already getting spikes thrown at them and water bottles and beer bottles, and they don't know if people have weapons or not. I couldn't imagine doing their job.
Impossible job.
It's an impossible job, and so it's just so. It is frightening. They must be making a decision that, look, we don't know. We'll have to apologize afterwards, but we're not going to let anybody shoot a police officer or burn down a building. And it will be very interesting to hear what the strategy is with Chief Craig, because overall it seems to be working. I mean, you being detained and some reporters having some rubber bullets headed their way it could be worse than that. That's not great.
Yeah, I think the only thing the activists would, at least on Sunday, would have said, hey, we weren't doing anything. We were peacefully gathering. And then they were, forced out. And is that right? Is the question to
Christine, did you see anything we're reading a couple news reports where there's some organizers coming from out of state.
Yeah.
And they have pallets of bricks, and they're more organized. They're bringing medicine and they're just more organized. And I can't get a handle from the limited articles I've read, who they are, who's sending them, who do they represent, why would any political party or anybody want this to happen? Did you see any of that? And you and your reporters, do you know anything about what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I can't say, but I know there's a lot of rumors in nationally and locally about who's motivating or pushing stuff. But I did see a lot of folks with legal aid groups. They had green neon hats, and they were there as observers. And then also, a lot of people were giving out the bail project number. If you get arrested, here's the number you should call. So there was a lot of organization along those lines. A lot of people bringing water, bottled water, even people the protesters I saw on DPD grounds, people picking up trash. Like they had, a couple of people who were going around and just picking up the trash, just as small as that. But they were pretty organized, a lot of water, and those bail numbers, people were prepared,
That's a first. I've never been in anything like that, but the fact that they're worried about their hydration during these events is impressive.
Yeah, a lot of people had milk, ready in case, to wash that off, if it got to that, So, I think
wash
day
out the
3,
pepper spray.
Yeah.
Right.
So day 3, I think, they were prepared,
Okay.
There's a lot of pride in the city, though. It's come so far, and Christy and I both worked downtown for decades, and we saw it when it was completely empty and no one was there. And we saw the progress that's been made, and the citizens and the residents see that too. And I don't think anybody wants to see us move backwards. And so that's what's so interesting when you mentioned people picking up trash. At the event, it's because suddenly there's a lot of pride in community. And I think that's what was going on with the Nike store. And I think that is probably going on, that may be the difference between here and other cities right now. I think we're appreciative of how far we've come.
I think that's true, but then there's a flip side to that. I think part of why people are so still passionate in Detroit, or Lewis talked a little bit about that, is because there are so many still problems that are not addressed in the neighborhoods of Detroit, and so many inequities. And I think that is the point that he was making, that why people are so passionate on these issues and see them interconnected, and whether it's water or foreclosure or, some of these other evictions. And I think that's a motivator in turn, getting people to show up so passionately too, is because they feel like there's these things that have not been addressed, although downtown has been addressed, and they talked a little bit about that, bringing up what they saw, the protesters saw as kind of a, I think two-faced, maybe there's probably a better way to characterize it, but talked about how they felt that the Duggan administration had welcomed in, white folks to the city. But now, the criticism, more recently with the protests was that, we have all these white suburbanites coming in town, to protest. Well, the protesters, the organizers really, making the point that Duggan didn't have an issue with these white folks when they came in the city, but now suddenly that they're protesting, that police administration have a problem with them. So I think that there are definitely these huge systemic issues in Detroit that will not go away, that we've seen for, obviously you too, Kevin, for decades. And that's partly what's, motivating a lot of people to get so involved and showing up 3 days like this in a row, because there's so much passion about these issues that have not been addressed.
That's interesting because obviously, the original cause, of the protests is police brutality, but in Detroit, you do have a very passionate and large crowd of people, residents who are just very upset and outraged that their concerns haven't been addressed in the neighborhoods. They still don't have transportation. There's no jobs out in the neighborhoods. There's no buses. There's nothing. I mean, it's really not progressed very much here and there, but overall, there's still, look at all the residents that don't even have running water. I mean, there's serious problems. And I wonder if that's what they are protesting, if that's part of, I mean, like you mentioned, if that's part of why they're going up.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people are ready to speak out and feel that they're combining these moments. And, Duggan administration would argue that they've made vast improvements in jobs and some of these issues. But, as tax foreclosure in particular, so many people have lost their homes, and this equity that they've built up. And part of that we've written at the Detroit News is connected to, what the city was charging folks in property taxes and people losing their homes. So there's a lot of, anger stemming from this. So, and maybe this is tapping into some of that.
Hopefully this brings about some change. Hopefully some good will come with something good will come out of this. That's what we all can hope for. We hope that everybody stays safe, including you, Christine. And
thanks.
Be careful out there. Thank you for working so hard to keep us informed. Yeah. We really do appreciate it. And, before we sign off on this podcast right now, my firm, my staff have been emailing me. We've been talking, and, we are all very concerned for our city and saddened, and we are here to help. If there are peaceful protesters, if there are people out there who've been arrested wrongfully and who want some free legal advice, some free legal help, reach out to me, reach out to my firm. You know how to get a hold of us. We will help because, we're here and we want to be part of this and make sure that people aren't getting arrested wrongfully, and whether it be a reporter or it be just a person going down there to peacefully protest with your children or anybody else in between. Who want to be part of the solution. We are here to help. And please keep in touch, Christine, with what you're hearing. We'll keep watching you. We'll keep watching your stuff. Try not to get gassed without proper gas mask.
Right. I'm on furlough the rest of the week, so you won't see me for that.
So you're safe.
You have to think twice about the next time you're asked to volunteer to come in. You might want to think twice about that. Maybe have a Sunday afternoon cookout or something. Yeah.
Well, I hope you have George Hunter on, because he was really in the thick of it too, and I know he's on furlough this week, unfortunately too. But it's just sad that we have to take some of the best folks off the reporting ranks because of this. And
well, Kevin's on George to come on the show. People sound like they have some free time.
Yeah, George was going to come on today, but he's on furlough and can't come on until he's off furlough. So he said he'll come on next week when he's off furlough. They're not allowed. He can't be on when he's on furlough.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right.
Can't work.
Well, thanks again.
Okay,
and
thank you. Yep.
We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Christine. You're safe.
Wow. I don't even know what to say, Kevin. I truly mean that I hope that some good comes out of this. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying. I feel bad for those store owners down there who are trying to survive through this COVID, and stay open. And then you have this go on. You feel sorry for the police. You feel sorry for the reporters. You feel sorry for the citizens. I mean, you feel sorry for everyone who's out there. And you just hope that somehow through all of this, that something can come from it. We do obviously need to have that discussion, about police brutality, about systemic racism. But here's this whole community coming together, and I just can sit back and feel bad for every single piece of it. It's just so frustrating. It's maddening. And I don't know exactly what you do, but I do know that the police need to not allow the city to burn down. And so
I don't think anybody wants to burn down, but the truth is, Kevin, I'm reading posts, and there are people who think that they need to burn stuff down to be heard and to have change. And I'm conflicted with that. I mean, because I don't want anybody dying or getting hurt from a fire or looting. And then there's Target and there's some decent organizations saying, I saw a medical office that was vandalized, and they said, we're going to be okay. You guys, we are going to be okay. We're not mad. Target has said that. That's pretty mature. in this day and age. And then you have our, the doofus in Washington trying to incite more violence and not helping at all. I mean, I haven't talked to one person, Republican, Democrat, who thinks that he is helping. And him, there's just a picture of him sitting in some White House bunker tweeting negative things to incite violence is so bizarre and hurtful. But I'm torn about the people who think that they need to burn stuff down and loot.
Well, they've been people have been protesting for years, right? And nothing has changed. I mean, you can go down the list of all of these cases of racial attacks by white police officers on African Americans and people of color, and you have these protests and people are upset, but then it's not changing. And so you ask, well, what actually is each department doing to change it? What steps are being taken to make this stop so that there is change? And people aren't feeling that there's any real change. They just feel like, oh, it flares up and then it goes back to the way it was. And so at some point you want to burn something down to say, hey, we want somebody to actually do something. I think that's the feeling out there, Yeah,
and what's that magic list? What needs to be done to not just stop the violence, to stop this, but what needs to be done? And I just think we need some really good leadership, and I just don't see it in this country right now to bring this country together. I mean, where is our national leaders trying to fix this, trying to calm us down, trying to have words of wisdom? And I see zero leadership.
I would love to have Chief Craig and Mayor Duggan on at the same time to talk about race. Mayor Duggan's a strong mayor, a white male. Chief Craig is a strong police chief, a black male. I wonder if having that diversity of power is helpful in Detroit if we're making any gains, or if we're not making, or if nothing's different here than anywhere else. But it's just an interesting conversation, and that's what happened. Conversations need to be had. You have to know how other people are feeling. You can't just think, oh, I know what it's like to be in someone else's shoes, because you don't know. And when people sit down and tell you, you suddenly have a new appreciation for what someone else is going through, and they may have a new appreciation for your experiences as well. And there does need to be more of that for sure. This sort of everybody going off in the groups, whether it's Republican and Democrats or black and white or whatever it is, that's not healthy. And I'm afraid there's been too much of that.
Well, looks like our chief has been tied up. Do you want to check your phone while we're sitting here live?
Yeah, he had a 2:00 press conference, and he was going to join us after that. Let me see if I can interrupt his press conference with a text.
Yeah. So Mike and Kevin want to talk to him.
We're here. We're ready. I'll see if we get a response. But we can pop back on when he comes on if you're available.
That's great.
We'll see.
Let's do
if he
that.
Comes back, we'll come back.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin, for being here. If I don't see you again today, Ryan, who's in the background, thank you very much. And thanks. There's Ryan live, our chief engineer / director. Hi, Ryan Jones.
Hi. You guys are doing awesome. So let's carry it on, and if Chief Craig comes back on, we can fire up another live stream.
Awesome. So why don't we end this one now, and thank everybody for watching and listening, and then we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Kevin.